All right, everybody. Thank you once again for joining us on the Remarkable Coach podcast. I'm your host, Micheal Pacheco, and today with me, I have Audie Fridstein. Audie is CEO of Your Call to Action, LLC, a US-based coaching firm that empowers mid to senior level leaders with proven strategies, guidance, and support to successfully prepare for, execute, and secure what is next in their career, drawing upon personal experience, landing multiple offers, and having coached hundreds of executives in securing solid job offers. Audie thrives on helping others achieve similar results. Audie, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks so much, Michael. I'm thrilled to be here and look forward to our talking.
Yeah, so glad to have you. I like to open up the Remarkable Coach with inviting our guests to just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into coaching.
Sure. So a little bit about myself is I was born and raised in the northern suburbs of Chicago, and I lived a pretty idyllic childhood, lived in a great neighborhood, made some wonderful friendships back in the day when I was really young, like maybe through my teenage years, who are still, many of which are still friends of mine today. So nice. Building relationships has come naturally, and I really cherish those friendships. I started working when I was in high school. So when I was old enough to actually work, and I found that most of the jobs I had were either sales or were customer facing. I just had a real easy way of connecting with people and building that know, like, and trust, even at that young age. And I continued working even when I was in college for part of my college years. And I went to University of Illinois, and I was in their business school. And then after I graduated college, even I had my business degree, I first went into sales. Because I really liked meeting people, understanding maybe what their challenges were. And I really felt that through selling, I could help solve their problem or come back with a solution that would help them. And so when my first job out of college was actually with one of the leading consumer product companies. And at that time, I realized, I could definitely sell. I was getting a lot more placement of our products, in ads on the store shelves. And then I also realized I was being paid the same thing as someone else who was a slacker. So I thought, okay, if I have good sales skills, why not go into a different type of sales where I could be paid according to the value I bring? And so I quickly went into more of the B2B sales in business services, and soon thereafter, the technology field, which at that time was still very much in its infancy. You didn't see PCs on office desks. That was years before that. So, and I loved it because I was constantly learning. It was changing like crazy. And so, I spent many years in B2B sales in progressively responsible sales and sales leadership roles. And what I found is, because of being in the technology field, there were a lot of changes that took place. Companies were acquired, new leadership came in, and over time, it just became very clear that when a company was acquired or new leadership, they oftentimes brought their own people in. And then no matter how good you were at the company, you sort of get squeezed out or made life miserable. Like, they take your really good accounts and have you start from scratch again. And it's like, what gives? And I was the type of person that it was like, that's not fair. I also knew I couldn't fight City Hall. So while I was still working, I would start putting my feelers out for another job, because that was also a way for me to get career advancement. And back in the day, they didn't have people like job search coaches or even career centers, for that matter, that could really help people with their interviewing and job search skills. And so I started creating my own routine that when I would go into job search mode, I would kind of pull out my little routine that I created, and I would tweak it along the way. And I soon realized I had this great process I ultimately would end up getting multiple offers. They were really good offers, and could choose where I wanted to go next. And I did that. So, um, you know, that's kind of my background prior to coaching.
Mhm.
What led me to get into coaching, though, is back probably 8 years ago,
Mhm.
I was downsized. And I completely understand why companies need to downsize. I know it wasn't anything personal or anything to do with my performance,
Mhm.
and I get it. There's a need for companies to do it. But after the second time, I kind of paused
Mhm.
and I said, maybe this is a time to reevaluate what I do next for
Yeah.
X number of years left. What do I want to do? And so I did some really deep thinking.
Mhm.
I mean, almost like peeling the onion back about what did I really enjoy about my whole career, not only in corporate America, but in sales.
Mhm.
What did I really enjoy about it? What really brought me joy? What were some of the high points? And so, I really thought that through. And then I also thought what comes naturally to me.
Mhm.
If I don't have to work super hard on, on a new skill or something like that, what comes natural?
Mhm.
So I looked at that, and then I also looked at what kind of lifestyle do I want to have? In my past lifestyle, I traveled extensively. I
Mhm.
traveled anywhere from 25 to 75% of the time for
Yeah.
years. And I loved it, but it also impacted the rest of my life. So
Sure.
I thought, okay, I have my magic wand. What do I want to do? And just doing that soul searching and really thinking about answers to these questions, I
Mhm.
came up with coaching.
Mhm.
And I don't know how I came up with that because I didn't know any coaches.
Uh-huh.
So I looked into coaching. For me, it was important that I went for my certification. I wanted to learn the, the right way to coach, and I wanted to get certified. It was as important as my bachelor's degree.
Mhm.
So I went through an intensive program, and when that program was over, I launched my business.
Mhm.
And then within the year after that, I got my ICF certification. So that's what led me to go into it. And ironically, when I started my coaching business, I was coaching salespeople at technology companies because that was my background.
Okay.
That's what I loved. That was what I was good at. And so I went that route. And I also did the job search for mid to senior level executives.
Mhm.
And after about a year, it was so obvious. I really enjoyed helping mid to senior level execs going through job search.
Uh-huh.
It was so much more rewarding. I could absolutely see the impact on them and their livelihood and their families and their relationships. Because when someone's out of a job or someone's miserable in a job, it doesn't just impact them, it impacts their loved ones, their life,
Mhm.
everything.
Mhm.
So, and that's what I've been doing, focusing exclusively on the helping people figure out what's next and then helping them get that job. And it's been so rewarding.
Awesome. So I want to talk more about how you got into coaching, but before we go there, I want to take us down a little tangent out of selfish personal interest. You come
Sure.
from a tech background, so do I. I'm curious, what kind of tech were you working in? Like what were you doing back then?
Yeah. So it was a number of things.
Mhm.
Um, I worked for a number of companies during that time. So it was mostly either enterprise software,
Mhm.
SaaS, which is now cloud,
Mhm.
cloud-based software, some management consulting type services.
Mhm.
Um, as I like to say, it was usually anything that wasn't hardware
Mhm.
related, because there was a time I sold software like for the operations,
Mhm.
um, or or even the like technology operations um, at a company. So the that's kind of where it was at. And again, what I found is over the years, I worked with people in IT, the executives
Yep.
in IT, in finance, in marketing. And that all plays into the people that I serve now is I'm comfortable working with them. I get what their world is like.
Sure.
So I offer that extra connectivity there. What about you? What were some of the technology that you were in?
So yeah, I started working at Intel as a quality assurance engineer in '99. I worked there for a number of years, and then I moved over to McAfee,
Sure.
where I did McAfee virus scan. I was a QA engineer there for a while. I did computer virus research, and I started to get into sales engineering, which is where I feel like our stories might like cross paths just a little bit.
Right. Yeah, I relied on the sales engineers a lot,
Yeah,
especially with the more complex sale,
yeah, yeah,
because we would tag team at the account. They could talk the technical piece,
yep,
and I could talk the human piece. Not
yeah. I
not to say
worked.
they aren't human, but yeah, interesting background.
Yeah,
But
it's
you work with great companies.
yeah, it was a good it was a good time. It was a good period of my life. I learned a lot. I was very young. I started working at Intel when I was 19.
Woof.
Straight out of high school. Um,
Wow.
and yeah, it was a good time. But neither here
Good
nor
for
there.
you.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
sure.
It was fun times. Um, let's see, where were we? So coaching, when you sat down and you kind of mapped out what you wanted for your life, did you know that coaching was called coaching at that time, or did you just have this kind of nebulous idea of what you wanted to do and maybe you could call it coaching?
Right. A very good question. So at the time, I just was, for lack of a better word, and it's an awful visual, but it's the truth. I kind of threw up on paper,
Huh?
but I
Sure.
threw up words. I threw up thoughts. In fact, I shared this story in Kevin's um, podcast, but the short version is I went to a forest preserve with a pad of paper, big old pot of, thermos of coffee, and a
Love it.
chaise lounge.
Love it.
And I parked myself there and said, I'm going to walk away with some clear ideas of what I'm doing next.
Hmm.
And I got there early in the day, and I think it was late afternoon when I finally left.
Hmm.
Maybe it was also because I ran out of the coffee. But the point of it is, I just kept saying, what did I enjoy, like, about my sales career?
Hmm.
And I'd come up with something. I'm like, what is it about that brought me joy?
Hmm.
And I kept peeling that back.
Hmm.
And so I came up with the things that I enjoyed. For example, I connect really well with people.
Hmm.
I always have. From a young child, I could become fast friends with anyone. I just have this way that people tend to be drawn to me,
Hmm.
and that comes naturally, and I enjoy it. I enjoy the people interaction. I
Hmm.
also enjoyed the times when people would come to me and say, you seem to be good with strategy on X,
Hmm.
or I need your help in trying to break into an account. So they would come to me and ask my advice, and I would help them. And then they would all of a sudden start flourishing,
Hmm.
and I'm like, this is great. I mean, it's a great feeling to know that you're
Sure.
helping someone else and they're going off and doing a great thing. So that was a common thing. I love to help people, to help them get to a better place.
Hmm.
And so that was important. Another piece is, because I think, because I had traveled so much, and again, I love the travel, but enough already.
Hmm.
Um, and I was looking at where I was at age wise.
Hmm.
I thought, I want to create a business where I could live anywhere in the world. And as long as I had internet or cell phone connectivity, I could still run my business.
Preach.
So at any point in time, whether I wanted to move someplace within the States,
Hmm.
move someplace else, out of the country, I could do that. In other words, not be relying on a local market or a brick and mortar.
Hmm.
And that was really important, because I've always been one, I'm an adventurous type person. I'm willing to take some risks. I'm very independent. And I wanted to build this business that I could be that way, yet still have a heavy interaction with people and helping people.
Sure.
So it was really more of, going back to your question, it was more of putting these thoughts on paper And then I looked at it and I said, okay, here's all the key things. Here's the nice to have.
Mm-hmm.
What could I do? Like what kind of jobs or businesses are out there?
Mm-hmm.
And again, I don't know where coach popped in my mind, but I was like, what about a coach? Because I could coach and also mentor.
Mm-hmm.
Again, when you have your own business, you can do whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there is both, because I have a methodology that I use, I tailor it to my individuals,
Mhm.
but my routine that I used years ago has worked repeatedly for decades. I tweak it based on what's happening in, the workplace now or hiring now, but it's a process and I tailor it to my clients to where they're at and what they're looking to do. So I just thought a coach is a good place to start because I can train, I can mentor.
Sure.
At the end of the day, I'm helping people where most people just don't have that expertise. If someone's head of marketing, CMO, or someone's a senior VP in some other functional area, that's their expertise.
Mm-hmm.
So lean on me for my expertise in helping you find what's next
Mm-hmm.
when you're in that situation. So that was kind of how it was, but I didn't know. Now I know a ton of coaches and it's a great community.
I love it. I want to kind of double down on the importance of what you did when you went, you took your notebook and a thermos of coffee and you went out of the office and you kind of thought about stuff, and maybe you did some visualization and thought about what your day would look like. I love that stuff. Has had such a profound impact on my life. When I've taken the time to do it, and I don't always do it, and I should do it more often, but thinking about, like my perfect day, what does my day look like? And thinking about how to, kind of design your life or kind of make changes in your life, incremental changes to get to where you want to go. So
Right.
I think everybody should be doing that kind of thing. It's super valuable.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I mean, it works for me. And I oftentimes will suggest similar or something like that to my clients as
Sure.
well. It's just, the key was, I was at a forest preserve. It was beautiful.
Mhm.
It was a beautiful environment. I wasn't going to run into anyone I knew. It
Mhm.
was no distractions. I didn't have my phone on. I mean, and it's like the perfect situation just to let your mind go.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So,
think, and I'll share a real short story about how it has
I love
impacted my life. My wife and I sat down 3 years ago at our kitchen table, and we said to each other, let's think about what the perfect day in our life looks like. And so we each wrote down, it was maybe 4 or 5 pages in a notebook, and we compared them, and they were pretty darn close. And the big part about it, at that point, we were living in the suburbs of Vancouver, Washington, and we both wanted to get out into the country. We're big hikers. We love going camping. We were talking before about Millie Chrisman and how much she and I have in common. And Millie Chrisman, by the way, for listeners and viewers, she was on a previous episode of Remarkable Coach. That was a great episode too, so go check that one out. But long story short, too late. About a year after we did that exercise, we closed on 30 acres property in the Washington State Cascade Mountains, where we're living now. We built a house completely off grid. We live here now, and it has just completely turned our lives upside down in the best way.
that is phenomenal.
And
Did you know anyone who had done that?
Nope.
Good for you. You're pioneering that.
Yeah. But it has sitting down and going through that exercise. And this is why I say I want to do it like twice a year or once a quarter even. And I just don't do it as often as I should, because it has such a profound way of focusing your attention on the direction that you want to go. Right.
Right.
So you're not just kind of going through your day, stumbling through your day and just doing stuff without a goal in mind.
Right. Right. It's funny that you say about the visualization, because I do think for those times where you've got some big decisions to make, or, bigger decisions than your everyday ones. It
Yeah.
does help to kind of go off where you can kind of be on your own without distractions.
Mhm.
But you talked about visualization, like visualizing like what your life might be.
Mhm.
And I will tell you personally, visualization is powerful.
Mhm.
And I oftentimes share with my clients for them to, it's part of the preparation for an interview. I have them imagine who they're talking to. They
Mhm.
usually know the title.
Sure.
And it's like, imagine what kind of questions they would ask you. Like if you were interviewing the person, if you
Mhm.
were interviewing yourself, what questions would you ask? So it's sort of putting yourself in their shoes.
Mhm.
But the visualization itself, I remember early in my sales career, one of my first territories was in downtown Chicago. So I had a vertical territory as opposed to miles wide.
Sure.
And as I was going to a sales call in the elevator, I would visualize the conversation, like what I was asking them, how they responded, and what the outcome was, before I walked out of the meeting and into the elevator.
Mhm.
And I would say 99 times out of 100, what I visualized took place.
Yeah.
It was scary.
Yeah. I
So if you
mean,
visualize it, it's like muscle memory.
mhm.
Not all the time, but it was just scary. I'm like, this is amazing.
I'm going to share another story. This is
Good.
from Own Your Day, Own the Day, Own Your Life. Author is Aubrey Marcus.
Okay.
We'll throw that into the show notes as well. And in there, he cites a study, and he's got a bibliography. So the study's in there. I don't know exactly what it is. I'm not going to look it up right now, but it's an actual study. They had a double-blind study. The control group lifted weights, or they did something, curls, right? So it was about the bicep. And then the actual study group would sit down on a couch and think and imagine and visualize doing curls and flexing their biceps, right? And they had they went to the level of, they had sensors on the people's biceps as they were visualizing, to make sure that they were not physically flexing. So they're
Okay.
not physically doing anything. It's all in the head. And the people who were only visualizing and thinking about flexing their muscles, they gained, I want to say, like a ridiculous amount. I want to say like 20 or 30%. I don't remember how much it is, but they physically gained muscle. That is
incredible.
Double blind, like legitimate peer reviewed study.
Interesting.
It's real.
Yeah. I'm a firm believer in it. Yeah, it's incredible. I love that story.
Yeah, it's a great one. And it's a powerful way. I encourage you to steal it and use it. I think it's a really powerful way to communicate to your clients the power, right, of visualization and thinking and stuff, right? When you're going into an interview, visualize yourself being charismatic, visualize yourself smiling, visualize yourself answering every question really easily. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, that's great. And thanks for referencing that book. I'm gonna I'll take a look at it after our conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we got a little off track. Let's circle back to you.
Sure.
Tell us about your clients. Who's your ideal client? Who do you work with?
Yeah. So my ideal client, and thank you for asking, my ideal client is someone who is in mid to senior level management, at typically a company, corporation. It's someone who is either at or the equivalent of like a director level at the low end up to C-level.
Sure.
And my clients have spanned all of that. And it doesn't matter what industry, it doesn't matter what functional area, because how I work with them, it doesn't matter as far as how I work with them. And my approach is really geared more towards that mid to senior level executive, because the strategies I talk with them about, some of the other things we talk about that's going to help separate them, help them stand out, apply to that market versus anyone with a lot less experience or at a lower level at the company. So that's really it. And it's people, if I look at my clients, it's a combination. Yes, it's that level of individual in corporate America, but it's also they're either bored or feeling like they're being passed over for promotions. They're ready for a new challenge. So they're still working, but they've got this unsettled feeling.
Sure.
And they want to make a change.
Yeah.
Okay. They definitely want to make a change. The kind of person that probably wouldn't want to work with me is someone who feels that, but is too comfortable in their job. They're just comfortable.
Yeah.
So, because I probably would, my probably would be a waste of money for them. So the key is they're feeling unsettled. They're feeling like they're being passed over for opportunities. Maybe it's a toxic work environment. And because they're not really sure what's the best approach to finding something, that's where I come in, because that's my expertise. And so that's how I work with them. The other is people who have been downsized. Okay. So they, because corporate downsizing is still happening. And that could be either they've worked with, maybe, they worked with an outplacement firm and for whatever reason, it didn't click for them. Maybe it was the personality, the approach, whatever it was. People come to me. So I do work with quite a few people who are in between jobs and still want that guidance. And then there's others who are just struggling like crazy because they thought they could do it on their own. And I get it, but it's not getting them results. They're not getting past the screening interview. They're bombing interviews and, or they're frustrated with how their search is going nowhere. So they come to me then. So as long as someone is really motivated and wants to make a change and they're in that kind of that director level up to the C level, I'm their person because I love working with that level of people. I love working with driven people, motivated, they want to make changes. And yeah, that's the part I love. And I've worked with hundreds of clients. So I enjoy it.
Audie, let's talk about your marketing for a minute here. How do you find your clients? How do you meet these people? Because certainly in the first kind of group of ideal clients that you spoke of, people who are actively working, right? But maybe they're looking for another job because maybe it's not a good culture fit, or for whatever reason, they're looking for another job, but they're currently employed in a position, in a position of some leadership, right? Certainly if it's director level or above.
Definitely leadership. They're very much in leadership.
So there's some sensitivity there, right? They can't, it's difficult to publicly be looking for a job when you're, certainly if you're in the C-suite, right? Because you're in the public at that point. Maybe director level, you're not so much public, but certainly if you're in the C-suite, you're very much out there and in view of lots of people. So how do you, two-part question. How do you find your clients? And two, how do you work with them on when there is that kind of sensitivity in looking for another job?
Yeah. So most of my clients to date have come from referrals. They've definitely come from referrals. So it's either, in that example you were using, is they may have shared with a friend of theirs or a former colleague that they were unhappy, keep it on the QT, keep it quiet. And if it was a former client of mine, they would say, you really should reach out to so-and-so.
Yeah.
So that's probably the bulk of where I've gotten my clients. The other is for the past 2 years, a little over 2 years, I've been sending out a monthly newsletter to my clients with some valuable content, or not my clients, my email list. And that includes a lot of prospects.
Sure.
That includes friends or family because they know of people who might be looking, and also former clients. And so the newsletters are very valuable. There's good content that's going to help people. But also I make it very clear. If you happen to know of anyone who's either struggling in their search or is, bored or unhappy at their current position, forward my newsletter or have them get in touch with me. So I do put that call to help type thing in my newsletters. The other is how I get clients is, since becoming a coach, I quickly realized working on my own was not the best thing, and that there is real value in being part of mastermind groups, other business related groups with other coaches, entrepreneurs, small business owners. And so I've been very selective about the different groups or masterminds I join. And one of the things I look at are other people who are providing complementary services, or maybe I should rephrase that, services where they're supporting my ideal clients, but in a completely different way. So like headhunters would be one, because they're working with the same type of clients I am. And that's actually a really good referral partner, because I can refer my clients to them and vice versa.
So a
but
headhunter,
also,
just real quick, a headhunter is not a competitor for you.
not necessarily.
Okay.
Some headhunters do get involved with some level of interview prep for a client, may give them some feedback on their resume, but I do so much more than that. I work with my clients on getting their messaging right. It's not just what they say, but how do you say it with impact and still holding yourself with integrity. So some headhunters could be a potential, but I don't look at the little bits of pieces that they do as my real competition, because at the end of the day, a headhunter is looking at making sure their candidate gets selected
at
the hiring company, and then they get paid.
They're only looking at business, really.
Yeah. So headhunters could be one. Another are leadership coaches, because a lot of the executive or leadership coaches are working with corporate executives. And I've had a number of referrals from those that say, my client, I'm working with them on leadership and executive, but they've just indicated that they are miserable at their job. They're going to look for something. That's not my forte. Would you help them with that? And it's like, I'd love to. So I get an introduction that way. But I've also, with these masterminds I was talking about, or these different group programs, it's all geared around like running your business, or it's geared for coaches, consultants, entrepreneurs, small business owners. But I try to look at the audience of the people in there. And again, do they offer services to the same client? Like financial planners could be one, because they're working with mid to level executives. And if they happen to hear that person's unhappy or looking for something, they can refer them over to me, and vice versa, depending on, because sometimes people will share stuff with me and it's like, hey, I know of a really good financial planner if this is something you want to just explore. So I like the referral partnerships, and it's kind of a loose relationship, but the point is, let's help each other. And more importantly, let's continue helping the client. So those are the big areas. I am going to be starting probably mid-year podcasts.
Good.
So I think that's going to be another way to kind of get my messaging and my wording out and getting the word out.
What's the plan? What's the plan for the podcast?
I haven't really planned it out fully, and I'll probably, if it's okay, circle back with you and get some advice from you if you're open to it.
You bet.
But I just want to make sure, I love helping people. And if I can provide some really good guidance in this area, because this really is my expertise. I've walked it, talked it, lived it. I know what my clients are going through. And I have a great solution, and I work with my clients on strengthening the areas that they're not that strong in to make them strong.
Mm-hmm.
So, but those are probably the big things. I dabbled in Facebook ads, but my clients aren't generally on Facebook. So I'm probably going to do more focused LinkedIn type
LinkedIn outreach.
Outreach.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's smart. Yeah,
because that's where my clients are.
that tracks.
Yeah.
Awesome, Audie. Let's talk about some of your wins, if you wouldn't mind. Just share with us one or two or three of some wins that you've had in your career for your clients.
For my clients, sure, I'd be happy to. So I'm trying to think which ones. So one that I'll start with. An executive came to me somewhat in a panic. She was referred by a former client of mine, and she contacted me, I think it was a Thursday, in a panic that she's working. She had been interviewing for like the dream job at a company,
Mhm.
and she absolutely bombed it.
Oh, no,
And
that hurts.
she was horrified because she's like, I know I could do the job. I know I would be great there. I know, but she
Mhm.
bombed it.
Mhm.
And she was able, the person that referred her to me works at that company.
Mhm.
Okay. And she went to the senior leadership and said, I know so-and-so. I know I've worked with her before. She is top notch. She's top of her game. I don't know what happened with the interview, but would you consider giving her another chance? Trust me on this. And they did. So she had a chance for a do-over. So she contacts me on a Thursday saying, I've got an interview Monday. It's a do-over. Can you help me?
Mhm.
So, which I was happy to. So again, I'm pretty flexible as far as how I work with people.
Mhm.
And so we talked about how I could help her. And so we basically took, I can't remember the specifics, but there was some prep work for her to do before we met. So we agreed to work together,
Mhm.
and I sent her some worksheets to get her started. And we met, I think it was both a Saturday and Sunday. So this was Thursday. Sent her the paperwork. She worked on it Friday. We met, I want to say it was anywhere from 4 to 6 hours each day, where
That's
I
intense.
helped her with her messaging. I helped her with the mindset of interviewing, because there's a lot of mindset, and mind games you play with yourself.
Sure.
We did some mock interviews, because I talked through everything from how do you prep for the interview? What are the key things that you do and you prepare for?
Mhm.
Let's talk through some common questions you're going to get asked and other questions. Let's talk about how best to answer those. And then and then what are some questions that you want to ask? What are compelling questions, not just everyday questions that anyone would ask? The caliber of the questions you ask are so indicative of your interest level, and especially for these senior level roles.
Sure.
So we did an intensive, and she, felt prepared. She went for her interview on Monday, and she did a fabulous job. And they invited her back for another round and another round. And one of the final interview rounds was with the person she first met with, where she bombed it.
Mhm.
They could not believe the difference
Mhm.
in how she showed up for the interview, how she handled herself. They were like blown away. And at the
Love
end
it.
of the day, she got offered the job. And this
There
was
it
a
is.
senior level role. So I was so proud of her
That's
for
great.
how she just drank it all up, applied it.
Yeah.
And so that's one example. I'm still to this day proud of her for how she turned that around.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So another example, and this is pretty common, but I'll have clients that I work with, we go through kind of the flow of working together, my methodology and working together. And, you know, it's not uncommon for someone to go through a series of interviews and then they get towards the end and they're one of two people that the company's going to decide on. And just like in any game, there's a winner and there's a loser. Although I don't look at it as losing because they made it that far. And there sometimes are ways to leverage that.
Sure.
Anyways, so not too long ago, I was working with a client where he got interviews. At first, he was struggling a little bit to get past the second or third interview, and we worked together on the interviewing and whatnot, his messaging. And then he started going much further, and then things got quiet. Companies he was talking with, they went dark, which again was upsetting to him. And I said, this is typical. I mean, it's not all run, make you an offer. Sometimes there's pauses. But anyways, and so just a few weeks ago, he was sort of lamenting that, God, it's just so quiet. I had all these things going on and no one's getting back to me and I'm following up. And I said, just wait. You don't know what this afternoon or tomorrow will bring.
Yeah.
Well, lo and behold, a week later, we talk weekly, he said, I want you to know I heard from all three of these companies and they all have said they're preparing to make me an offer. And I said, way to go.
That's great.
So I help prep them so that when the verbal offer comes in, what to say. You know, I always encourage my clients, a verbal isn't going to cut it. You want it in writing before you give them any kind of indication or before you start negotiating. You got to have it in writing first. So I coach them on that. And then just this past week, all three offers came in. And now we're in the process of him negotiating and trying to decide which one's the right one. They're all great offers. He can't go wrong. But that type of scenario happens so often with my clients. And it's just having someone to say, no, there's nothing you did, nothing you said, don't overanalyze. Here's what you can do. In the meantime, you know, keep your foot on the accelerator and keep proactively reaching out to people.
Yeah. That's
awesome. Yeah.
I want to circle back to something real quick here. I want to be conscious of the time as well. I know we're coming up on the hour and be respectful of your time.
It's going by fast.
I know it's like that, right? Yeah. What, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, just some ideas, what kind of questions should a senior level management candidate be asking in a job interview? Right? That's got to be, like you said, that's definitely a huge indicator of that person's interest in the job, of their, ability for creative thinking, going into a position they may not know that much about. What kind of questions should someone be asking in an interview like that?
So great. Again, another great question. So my answer to that is it depends on who they're talking to. Okay. So typically in many companies, you may start out talking to what I call the hiring manager, whoever would be that person's boss. Sometimes you talk with them because you have an introduction to them through your network. Okay. But most of the time, people end up talking to someone in HR first. Sure. And so there's certain questions that you'll want to ask HR and some that you just wouldn't really be applicable to them. So when talking with HR, I mean, you definitely want to find out. One of my favorite questions is, why is this position open? And if they say it's a newly created position, don't just stop there, but say, what's transpired in your business that led to creating this role?
Totally. Yeah.
Okay. So don't be afraid to ask that, because you want to understand, why was this role created? What's its purpose? What is it? What hole is it plugging?
Yeah.
The other is, this is like my favorite, like first and second question to ask someone, and certainly HR is one of them, is to do some preparation. I have a number of steps to prepare. One of which is to see how long someone's been at the company. Okay. So if someone's, let's say this HR person has been with the company, 10 years, you could say, I've noticed you've been, this is one of the first few questions that you ask. I noticed you've been with the company 10 years. What do you like most about working here? Because first of all, it gets them talking. And if you think about it, people love talking about themselves, and they'll say, this was a great conversation they were talking. But you're also going to get the candidate is going to get tremendous insight into what are some good qualities about the company.
That's a great
And then you hear what they have to say. And then the flip side, since you just asked, what do you like most? A common next question is, what don't you like? You don't want to ask it that way.
Sure.
You want to come across positive. So my favorite next question is, if you could make any changes or improvements, what might they be? And I will tell you, I started asking that question 30 plus years ago when I was in job search mode. It stumped people, but in a good way. They remembered me.
Sure. Yeah. Because
and it also gives you good insight. Now, if it's someone who, like, if you're talking to, forget HR for a second, but let's say that you're talking to the hiring manager, and let's say they're the CMO or CFO. You could, the second part of the question could be, as you look back over the last year, what's the biggest change or improvement that you've spearheaded that you're most proud of? Because now you not only hear about what was a change or improvement they spearheaded, that in and of itself is valuable, but now you throw in that you're most proud of. Now you're going to get insight. Is that person more focused on the employees? Is it on the customer? Is it on the shareholders? So it just gives you some really good insight, because all of this is important to know whether, is this the right environment for you? So
gives you an insight into culture.
Yes. Yes. It's not just about the job. It's my opinion is, when you're looking for your next opportunity, and this is what I help clients get clarity on, it's not only what is that role, what is the scope of the role, the responsibilities, but what is your boss's management style? Because their management style might be one that you just don't, it demotivates you as opposed to supports you. What are the people like? Do you have shared values? Can you see yourself working with these people? So it's so much more than just the job. It's the people, it's the culture at the company, and any number of other qualities. Going back to your question about what are some good questions. So I already gave some, but like when you're talking to the hiring manager, and I use that with air quotes, the person that would be your boss, I mean, you should have a long list, because you're not only asking them about the culture at the company, what their management style is, but you really want to understand the size and scope of the role. Like, how large of a team do I have? Is this more of a turnaround situation? Is this more of a building up a new team? Is it, what's the purpose?
What does success look like?
Yeah, exactly. You want to understand, like, how you'll be measured. What are their expectations? I mean, and then just, again, some job specific type of questions depending on what your role is. But so it's really thinking about, who are you meeting with? Think about how you'll be working with them. And then what's important with people. Like, a lot of times during the interview process, people will meet with peers, like in other functional areas that they'll be collaborating with. And I always say, ask them, that building successful relationships, collaborative relationships, is so important to me. What does success look like to you? Find out. So that that if you end up getting offered the job and you take it, how that person wants to work together.
The other thing I really like about some of these questions that you're talking about, Audie, is it gives you, well, the interviewee, right? It gives the interviewee an opportunity to point out stuff that resonates with you and call it out. And that gives you a chance to kind of create a bond with the interviewer, right? Because you're like, oh, if you, when you ask like, what about this job do you really love? And you're like, oh yeah, I love that too. I love it when companies are like that. And then you're creating a bond between you and the interviewer, which is obviously like invaluable.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. I mean, there's so many different elements, but at the end of the day, I think what separates me, and well, there's many things that do, but when I work with my clients, these are people that are used to being in control. They lead departments, they lead divisions, they lead a team. They have some level of control over their team, over their day.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to remind people, when you're looking for your next opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
yes, you've got to be the gracious guest when you're on an interview, and let the interviewer take the lead on the call because they've invited you in. But other than that, how you go about conducting the job search, take control over your own destiny.
Own
They're
it.
asking you questions to see if you're a good fit.
Yeah.
You know what? It goes both ways.
Yeah.
You want to ask them questions to really understand the whole scope, so that by the time you get through 8, 9 interviews or however many you have a complete puzzle.
Yeah.
So that when they make you an offer, you can look at it and say, is this a good match? There's no perfect, but is this a really good match? And so you're taking control.
Yeah, and candidly, for you're interviewing for director level or above position, they're going to be looking for someone who's able to do that. So you're positioning yourself as someone who's not afraid to ask interesting, creative, difficult questions.
Right.
And just dive in and get your hands dirty, so to speak.
Right. The key with that, though, is be conversational.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, that's what I always tell my clients is, and plus I don't like the word interview. I always say conversation, because sometimes the word interview it's like nails on a blackboard,
Yes.
So it's like you're having a conversation, because
Yeah.
it just happens to be in the form of an interview, but some are very conversational. But the point is, it's a win-win. When they make you an offer, you want it to be a win-win for everyone, a good fit.
Absolutely.
And that's what I kind of coach my clients on. That's what how I approach it. And many of them just say it's just so refreshing, and it works.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's all good. Audie, is there anything that you would like to chat about that we haven't touched upon yet?
Boy, I think we've covered the whole gamut. We just haven't solved the world's problems.
There's nothing left to talk about.
I know.
You've got, you're currently accepting applications for your next group coaching program for Accelerate. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Thank you for bringing that up. So Accelerate is my 3-month group coaching program. Up until recently, I was exclusively coaching one-on-one, and I still offer that, but my focus is shifting to small group coaching programs where there's an application process, because I want to make sure I've got the right mix of people, at the same level, because a large part of this program is networking with one another and leveraging each other's network to help the other person uncover their next opportunity. So I'm being really selective about the people that will be brought into this group. So it's an application. I'll read the application, and within 24 hours, I will get back to the person and then either set up a call just to talk more about them and to share the details about the group program. But it's a 3-month program. It very much follows the flow of my one-on-one. It's just, it's 3 months. It's 3 months. It's pretty intense. Plenty of time, to ask me questions that could be more of a, relating to an individual's situation. But the best part is it's the community. You'll hear other questions people are asking that you may not have thought of to ask. And it's just, it's a great environment, and a great way, again, just to make sure the job seekers aren't feeling so alone.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Audie, where can our listeners and viewers connect with you online? Where's the best place for them to connect with you?
So thank you. The best place is through my LinkedIn profile. And so just, look up Audie Fridstein. There's only one of me in the world. It's not like a common name. So that would be one, is, reach out to me through that. If anyone wants to just kind of check out more about my services and a little bit more about my background, you can look at my website, which is, and don't do www. But just yourcalltoaction.net.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll be able to view it. But
awesome.
Yeah. So.
And we'll put those links in our show notes. For those of you maybe listening in your car, you can go there to check them out. Fridstein, by the way, is spelled Fridstein. So if you're searching for Audie, it's Audie on LinkedIn.
Thank you.
She's easy to find. Audie, thank you so much for joining us here. This has been a really great conversation. I can't believe an hour's gone by so quickly.
It has, and I can't thank you enough. And it's been great, and look forward to staying in touch.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you to our viewers and listeners for joining us again, and we'll catch y'all next time. Cheers.